Wake up, babes. New Pixar sequel in our midst. Yay. I didn't really have any expectations going into this, but the ones I had were more cynical considering what Pixar director and chief creative officer Pete Docter had to say recently about shifting future films to be more franchise-focused with mass appeal. Even though movies like Turning Red, Luca, and Doctor's Own Soul have been successes in their own right, truth be told, I haven't been excited for a new Pixar movie in years, and with Inside Out 2, it especially feels like another Pixar sequel. I've always been going in with very modest expectations, but I suppose expanding on Riley's mind made me ever so slightly intrigued. I like the first movie, I love his interpretation of the inner workings of the mind, and I love how the term core memory has been ingrained in internet culture, and I'm glad to see the sequel elaborate on that with things like the stream of consciousness and brainstorms. Even the belief system, which I guess is kind of a retcon since they show its creation when Riley was younger and it was never acknowledged in the first movie, obviously because the writer didn't think of it then, but whatever. I Love Me by Luminescence, and it reminded me of the great Shanaki's lair from Song of the Sea with how each thread holds something significant. I also like how much Joy progressed compared to the first film. You can tell she's grown by how she's genuinely supportive of the other emotions, especially sadness. It would lead to scenes of Riley crying as a message to the audience that it's important and healthy to do so, and I found that really admirable. The voice cast was good all around. Amy Poehler is still great as ever, especially that scene of Joy going ballistic on the other emotions. It was kind of scary, like how angry Phineas from Phineas and Ferb freaks me out, to be honest. But Phyllis Smith as Sadness especially stood out to me, even though she didn't have as much screen time, though it sucks Disney wasn't willing to give Bill Hader and Mindy Kaling equal pay compared to Poehler. Though $5 million? Really? I thought Liza Lapierre did a really nice job voicing disgust, and though I could tell Bill Hader's voice wasn't coming out of fear, Tony Hale still did decent work. I loved Maya Hawke's anxiety, maybe because I just love Robin, but she did really well capturing that manic energy, as well as that her motivations as a character is that she's doing what she believes is best for Riley, not some malicious villain dead set on destroying the life of this poor teenager. I also like how French they made ennui, since ennui is a French word brought to life by Dalek Zarkopoulos. Speaking of Riley, she's still an interesting character as she grows older. She's the right amount of relatable cringe all of us had to some extent when we were that age, especially with hating or loving things in order to fit in. I felt that. The braces gag at the beginning got me too, as someone who had them twice. The movie felt a tad derivative, with Joy fighting over core Riley, then it getting misplaced. When that happened, I knew how the rest of the movie was going to pan out, especially when the emotions were removed from headquarters. However, I still enjoyed the journey and liked that Joy spent time with anger, fear, and disgust instead of just sadness, so we got a ton of new dynamics and exchanges which I thought were great. We get new locations in Riley's mind like the vault, which feels like a dig on Disney's own vaults, and an expansion on the Pillow Fort from Imagination Land where it's turned into this office and all the cubicles have animation desks. I love that. Speaking of 2D animation, Bluey was great. I'm pretty sure this is the first use of 2D in a Pixar movie, right? You can really feel the Mickey Mouse inspiration in that he's parodying his Mickey Mouse Clubhouse iteration with him breaking the fourth wall, the way he summons Toodles, Pouchy, and him about to burst into song before he gets cut off. I loved that. However, at this point, this is where I start getting into my negatives, which happen to be pretty spoilery, so highway to the spoiler zone, baby. Skip to this time code if you haven't seen the movie yet. First of all, though I do like the way Pouchy was utilized in the third act, I was expecting Bluefy, Lance Lashblade, and or Super Dark Secret to come back, but they didn't. We got Chekhov's fanny pack, but not Chekhov's super big broadsword, you know? Part of me wishes they kept Riley's dark secret of, for lack of a better word, secret, since its payoff in the post-credit scene ended up being a disappointing Riley burned a hole in the rug. The comedy could be found in the fact that it's up to the viewer's interpretation. It could be anything. I also felt like Valentina was a tad underwritten. I do appreciate the movie making her genuinely kind towards Riley instead of going down the Regina George route, and there's a scene of the two of them practicing hockey, but they barely get to bond. I wonder if that scene was trimmed down because of deadlines. I really feel like that could have given us more insight into Valentina's struggles and maybe revealed that she was exactly in Riley's shoes instead of just being cool girl. I think about Belle and how Ruka fits the archetype of being the popular cool girl you think would also be the mean girl, but it turns out she has a crush on the dorky Kamishin, and she and Suzu have a scene bonding together about their love interests. I find it to be a really nice subversion of the mean girl trope. Or maybe that trope is just a Western thing. I don't think I've watched enough anime to know for sure. Or I could not be watching the right ones. Anyway, it could be me projecting my ideas and what I want this movie to be for me, but something like that could have been more interesting. Right? In fact, I feel like this movie's runtime could have been expanded upon since it's only an hour and 36 minutes, and scenes like those could have helped, especially with how I believe the third act was wrapped up in a little too nice of a bow. We see other players clearly not vibing with Riley's arrogance during the scrimmage, and I feel like the coach definitely would have noticed that, but it never gets acknowledged. Even that girl Riley knocked over is never brought up again. She may have ended up with a concussion, we don't know. At the very least, after she came out of the penalty box, Riley maybe could have apologized to her. Aside from that, I did think the climax was well handled. Make a realistic depiction of a panic attack jokes all you want, but I do believe displaying scenes like this are important and validate a viewer's personal experience. And I like the added touch of anxiety tearing up as she realizes what she's doing is harmful. But jumping back to an earlier scene, Riley breaking into the coach's office to read her notebook feels redundant to her stealing her mom's credit card in the first movie, and that managed to feel more intense. I think her just waltzing through the main entrance of the high school and the coach's office just so happened to be unlocked was too easy. Am I too cynical? Have I become burnt out on the mediocrity of Pixar sequels? I know this isn't the fault of the movie itself, but seeing how its box office returns is actually doing quite gangbusters, I worry that Pixar is going to follow through with their make less original movies statement. Inside Out 2 had one of the biggest domestic opening day debuts for an animated movie, and I just know Disney execs are going to be like, people only really do care about sequels. See? As justification to churn out more of them. But also it turning more of a profit in its opening weekend than Lightyear in its entire theatrical run is just, wow. People are saying Pixar is back because they made a commercially and critically successful movie for once, and I think that's hyperbolic. It's one movie and it could very well be a fluke. I don't want to be caught in another sequel era. I'm aware it's not like we're going to get only sequels in the future. After all, the first Inside Out came from said sequel era, but I've grown more and more disappointed with companies relying on box office statistics for their output strategies. I get it, they want money, but don't they want at least some dignity as well? What I'm trying to say is that I don't think this is Pixar's comeback, but I don't think it's the death of them either. I'm just worried. I do believe the execs were depending on Inside Out 2 to prove Pixar can still turn a profit at the box office, which has been proven right. I suppose it's a good thing Pixar hasn't been entirely reduced to Disney Plus status, but I do fear those executives are going to take the wrong lessons from this. It's been happening a lot recently. Anyway, Pixar, don't forget where you come from. The franchises you have now were original ideas at some point. Again, all this isn't a knock on the movie itself. I'm just afraid of what's going to follow. That's why the title of this video is that I have mixed emotions and the script is me trying to figure it all out. I can't even decide on a whole number rating for it, which would be a 6.5 out of 10, and I believe is a first for this channel. There are things I enjoy about it, though not enough to want me to come back again and again. I prefer the first film since it's more creative and has more of an emotional impact on me. Don't get me wrong, it's a good Pixar movie, better than Elemental and especially Lightyear, but not as good as some others from this decade like Soul and Luca. Anyway, I have a video planned on another thing I have conflicted feelings about, this time being an adaptation of my favorite movie of all time that I am much more passionate about, as in it'll probably be around an hour with a script over 14 pages long and well over 10,000 words, so look forward to that. That's gonna take a bit, but I wanted to get a more timely video out in the meantime. Well, be sure to comment, like, subscribe, and join my Patreon to support my channel, and I will see you later. Okay, bye!